You almost don't even have to look at the camera. Like we might introduce each other by looking at the camera, but it'll be mostly just a couple of guys talking, and it'll go something like this. Hey, thanks for joining us here at Keystone Lawn and Tree Care. A few weeks ago, you saw we went to Standout Promotions in Hayden, Idaho. We talked to Jennifer about the importance of signage, and we got a shop tour. Well, now I'm back a couple weeks later to talk with Mike. Mike at Standout Promotions, and we're upstairs in his office, and we're just kind of shooting the breeze a little bit because tax time is coming up, and nobody really likes talking about taxes, but it's really important.
Yeah, one of the things I think, Chris, that when I talk to new business owners, everybody feels like they have to be an accountant. They feel like the first thing they have to do is learn how to keep books, and I'm like, why are you trying to figure out how to do something that you have no knowledge or skill at doing?
Yeah.
So one of the recommendations I like to give people is just find yourself a good bookkeeper. They don't even have to be a certified public accountant, but hire either a bookkeeper and or an accountant. And for the money, you're going to pay probably, depending on the size of your business, anywhere from $100 on up, but it's just money well spent. I recently just hired a new one, and one of the things I really wanted to make sure is if I do have an audit, how present do I have to be? And her comment was, look, we take care of everything because we're doing your books, so they handle the audit. And I'm like, perfect, because I don't have time for it. Play by the rules, and then you don't have to worry about an audit. But if you do get one, then you're just letting someone else deal with it. The other thing I tell people is, I like to create a pro forma usually in November or December, which is kind of a forecasted budget. And, you just really, in your business, sometimes you just go, wow, I just really didn't know how fast the money went when you start doing expenses.
True. Yeah, sure.
So we always try to forecast, what our revenue is going to be. And it's kind of tricky. The other thing you want to do is you want to grow your business. So we like to see growth every month. So we use basically last year's actual numbers, and then we forecast based on an increase. So let's say you're going to do, I'll just use round numbers. If you're going to do $10,000 in the month of January, let's say you did that last year, then maybe this year you want to budget a 5 to 10% increase for that.
So you mean like I'm going to grow my business just automatically right out of the gate, 5 or 10%, and I'm already building that into my budget today?
Yep. We have an old saying, what gets measured gets done. So if we're eyeballing a number, a target number, let's say the number is $12,000. If that's what we decide our goal is for that month, we're just pushing and driving hard to hit that goal. The other thing on the pro forma is if you have that revenue projected, then you're going to have to project your expenses. So all your expenses, and then when you get done, we're thinking about, okay, what are we forgetting? And we also have in there savings, so you got a little bit of savings.
What happens about unexpected expenses? Like, how do you budget for the unexpected?
I generally, on my pro forma, I have two categories. I have like a miscellaneous, like that I might put money in, say it's $500 a month. So if it's Standout, if we have a piece of equipment go down that needs to be repaired or something, then we can do that. We're also looking at every year at our equipment. For example, you saw the screen printing press, and as we're doing the pro forma, we're like, well, how much more life do we have in that press? So we're thinking about what equipment we need to buy. This year we bought a new large format printer. So every year we're evaluating what equipment potentially do we need to buy, what's wearing out. And you know how it is in your business. Yeah. You might have a truck that has hit its life expectancy, and you're like, it still runs, but this thing could go out at any time.
Yeah, so I start to save a little bit of money and put it in my budget, $500 a month or something for a truck that might break down, but who knows? Maybe I get another year out of it.
Right. So I'll have a miscellaneous line item, and then I might just have a savings line item.
Sure.
and I'll kind of have those two things. Um, you know, you kind of having a plan is good. Otherwise, you're just spending money, and sometimes people wait till the end of the year to see how they did.
Sure.
Well, I know how I do every month. Good
Yeah.
business people, they know what they're doing. They know how much they're bringing in. They know how much they're spending.
Yeah, that's great advice. If you're getting anything out of these videos today, I want you to hit the like button, subscribe below, and share it with your friends. This is important stuff, and not everybody's talking about this stuff. It's kind of boring, it's dry, but it's critical, especially when you're first starting your business. So, Mike, I like making these videos, especially for somebody who's first getting started. We talked about money, how important it is when you're first getting started to start tracking your money, making your budget. But also another thing to think about is your logo and your brand. When you're first getting started, it's critical. You have to have some sort of logo and brand. And, I might have something vaguely in the back of my head of what I'd like to do, or maybe even have like my little brother sketch me something and I really love it. What can you help with here at Standout?
Well, it's funny, Chris, because one of the big problems that we see is people try to make these things really complex, and they're trying to tell a whole great big long story in something that you're going to basically have 3 seconds of somebody's attention.
Yeah.
So one of the big mistakes people make is they try to put too many colors in it. Okay, so we kind of like 1, 2, maybe 3 colors. That's kind of the maximum, really, for most of it. And then just try to simplify everything. Think of logos that are really recognizable to you, like Mercedes, right?
Or McDonald's. This is giant
McDonald's. If you stick to things that are simple, people, after a while, the branding will kind of take care of it, and they'll go, oh, that's Keystone Lawn Care. You kind of did good with yours. So show them your logo, Keystone Lawn and Tree Care. Basically, your name was really well thought out with your logo because you're just telling people what you do, right?
Yeah, sure.
You have 3 seconds to grab their attention.
Yeah.
Keystone Lawn and Tree Care. If I'm overly sensitized and need your product or service, I'm going to get a hold of you.
Yeah.
If I don't, I'm not.
It's not going to be important.
No. If you think about Standout, we've got 2 colors, maybe 3, but it's just clean and simple.
And it's easy to say and it's easy to spell.
Yep.
And it says what you do right in it. Funny enough, I made a video about that a few weeks ago about McDonald's versus Burger King and their logos. And I don't like McDonald's and their logo at all. The only reason that's developed into a brand is because they sold millions and billions of hamburgers. But, if you would have put Burger King and McDonald's logo side by side exactly at the same time when they first started, 50 years ago, the Burger King would have been way better because it actually says Burger King in their name, and their logo is actually cute and it's got like little hamburgers.
Yeah.
Versus McDonald's it doesn't say what they do, and it's just a big giant dumb M, and it doesn't make any sense. But I guess that could be over the time, and you develop that brand, it becomes synonymous with hamburgers.
Here's what I tell small business owners. Do you want to spend a lot of time and money trying to convince somebody to buy something that they're not going to buy? Or do you just want to get the people that want to buy what they want to buy? So for example, Apple, they have the money to be able to try to convince somebody that might not want their product to buy their product. They have the money and the time. But as small business owners, we don't want to try to convince somebody that doesn't want our service or our product.
Point. There's no hard sell. Either you're going to want your lawn mowed or you're not.
Think about this if you're reading the paper. If you're in the market, like you tell your wife, Jennifer, we need to get a new vehicle, and she agrees, then every advertisement that you see,
suddenly,
you're going to be responsive to, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not in the market for a vehicle, none of it, it's just wallpaper. Your eye just passes over it. So the trick is to try to, in those 3 seconds, get those people that are overly sensitized to needing your product to look at what you have to offer.
Now, what are some methods? I see a lot of people out there, especially when they first get started, they don't have a sign on their truck, or they don't have any kind of presence online, or they don't have a website. If you could tell somebody that's first getting started, maybe 3 things that are critical when first starting your business, maybe it's a sign, maybe it's a shirt, maybe it's a hat or a website, whatever. What would those 3 things be?
Well, the first thing is your vehicle, depending on how much you drive your vehicle, is a great billboard. I mean, it just is. And if you think about, one of the problems I always tell people when I do see logos on doors and stuff, I see these little tiny logos.
Yeah, too small.
That you can't see.
Yeah.
So if you want to make yourself a billboard, and I have billboards for another business, and billboards are expensive. They're really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're talking, between $1,000 and $3,000 a month for a billboard on a freeway.
And it only stays there for a month.
Well, generally you're signing contracts, like year contracts or 6 months. But yeah, there's a time limit. Your vehicle, I tell people all the time, your vehicle is a great place to advertise if you do it right.
What if I have kind of a crummy vehicle because I'm first getting started and I don't want to spend the money to wrap the whole thing? Or get a big billboard for the side of the truck. What am I doing if I'm going to plan on upgrading my vehicle within the next year or 2 as I grow?
I would still, and it's not, when we refer to wraps, we're referring differently than just like lettering. A wrap is where you're actually wrapping every square inch of the vehicle, or like the entire door, where maybe you're just going to have cut vinyl. It's less expensive, like the Fortress fence that we
the one that we saw a couple weeks ago.
So that's not what we would refer to as a wrap, but it's good. It's pretty inexpensive because you're just doing those doors, and it's big. Mm-hmm. So I tell people, do it big. Don't do it. People, when they put their phone numbers, their phone numbers are this big. Yeah. It's like, use that space. And if they need to call you, so I love tailgates, because when people are at a stoplight, it's like, if you're overly sensitized, and let's talk about fencing. I really need a fence. I really need a fence. And you're at a street light, there it is. Yeah. You're calling that number. Yeah. So it could be fairly inexpensive. You don't have to necessarily, it's basically, when you're talking about vinyl on a vehicle, it's per square foot. So if you do just doors, now if you want to do the full Monty and you're going to plan on having the vehicle for a while, do it across all the doors, do it big. But if, let's say you're like, I might get rid of this vehicle in 3 months, I would still put the money in at least the doors. And then if you decide to sell it, the vinyl can be scraped off fairly easy. If you have vinyl on a vehicle for like 6 or 7 years, it's harder to get off. The sun kind of bakes it in. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to get rid of a vehicle, sometimes people want to use magnets. Here's the problem with magnets. Yeah. What's the problem?
They fall off.
They fall off.
And they look kind of crummy.
Yeah, they look kind of like your fly-by-nighters. It's for a couple $100, you could get at least your front doors done, probably $200 to $300.
Yeah, that's affordable.
Yeah.
So that would be the first thing, is think about some sort of advertising on your vehicle. What would be the next thing? You're just getting started. You got your door wrapped or your door vinyl for a couple $100. What would be the next thing to do?
I think I really like rack cards, which are kind of the little brochure pamphlets that are on a cardstock. Mm-hmm. And wish I had one here. But you can get your message, what you sell on both sides, who you are, and just, once again, you don't come across as a fly-by-nighter. They're like, wow, this guy's a legitimate guy.
So where am I handing these things out? Am I going door to door? Am I leaving them in an office building? Like, what am I doing?
You could do guerrilla marketing. It just depends on how much business you need. I think once you get established, like with your business, Keystone, you kind of have,
yeah, we don't advertise, in fact, other than the trucks. And the wraps
you're probably at a point where, if you do have rack cards left over, it's kind of just like, maybe you're picking up a few customers, but you don't really need to do the guerrilla marketing where you're out like knocking on doors.
Yeah.
But I kind of like guerrilla marketing. If I was Keystone Lawn and Tree Care and I was just starting out, I might think about a neighborhood, like say I want a particular neighborhood that's close to where I'm at, and I might door knock.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
oh yeah, that's what I did when I picked a neighborhood, and I got some flyers made up, and I just went door to door to door, and I knocked, and
I think the difference is if you get a photocopied flyer or a printed copy on a cheap inkjet printer.
yeah, guilty.
You know, you just
It's
come
not quite as good.
Yeah, I mean, if you spend, I mean, you could spend like $150 and you can get 500 rack cards, really professional, high quality.
Yeah, that's
and they're holding this and they're like, they're thinking legitimate business, high quality. So think about that when you're promoting yourself. Do I want to be the photocopied black and white person, or do I want to come across like a legitimate person?
So what I'm hearing from the first couple things you talked about was that you're going to want to present yourself in a really professional manner, even if you're just getting started, and even if you're just pushing your mom's lawnmower from the garage and you're just getting started, or your dad's weed eater or something. You know, you want to at least give the professional appearance. You have a professional, even if it's just your door wrapped, and you have a professional appearance with your card stock. It's better than the photocopied flyer that I started with.
Yeah, and let's face it, today customer service is kind of, you know, with COVID and everything, we just kind of, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit.
Yeah.
And so if you want to set yourself apart from other businesses and have really good customer service, then you want to come across with this high quality image.
High quality image with wrap in the truck, or having some sort of sign, a good sign, not just a magnet. Some sort of decent flyers, and then again, not just photocopied in your own printer, but a decent card stock.
Yeah, and I think the third thing is you're going to have some kind of a uniform, right?
Yeah, sure.
If you showed up with some Nike shirt on, they might ask themselves the question: is this guy going to be back here in a month?
Yeah.
If I see you in your work uniform, I'm like, okay, this guy's legit. Okay, you're trying to create this legitimacy, and I think you do that with having some kind of a uniform.
Yeah. I'm getting a pretty good theme here for what you're saying. Is that again, you're first getting started, and you may not have a lot of money, but you want to give a good professional image with either a hat or a shirt. And maybe even if you don't have a shirt, maybe at least buying like a green hoodie or like a green shirt at Walmart or something, you know, like kind of, at least in our industry, it would be like kind of a neon green. And then having it halfway decent, not a magnet, you know, having these sort of things really seems to make it more professional.
I think for under $1,000, you can do all three of those things.
You're saying that for under $1,000, I could get some sort of image on the side of the vehicle. Mm-hmm. I could get some good flyers or card stocks, and I could even get a hoodie or a jacket.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's a pretty low barrier of entry.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And then, you know, just depending on what your business is and what your industry is and, you know, how much business you can take on, it just depends. I mean, I'm not going to say every business you can do for under $1,000 for marketing. I mean, some businesses just, that's the only way you get businesses is just constant marketing. But I think it's a great start.
I think it's a really good start too, because when I first got started, that's I went along those lines. I had a magnet and then it blew off. I had the little paper photocopies from my own printer, and then I upgraded. I went to Kinko's and I got like a decent one. Mm-hmm. And then when I started, I think I was just wearing like a white t-shirt and clean jeans, and then I almost immediately got shirts. Like I got just the t-shirt, and then later I got the sweatshirts and stuff and the hat. But I think that's good. I mean, we're on the same page. You know, you're first getting started. You don't have a ton of money, but these things are super important, and you don't have to keep continuing advertising. Because I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's like, you know, when you first get started, you got to get the phone to ring and you got to do it. But then what happens shortly after? What happens? You just start drowning in work.
Yeah, and somebody on the outside, they think it's real easy. They're like, just hire more people. And guys like us that are business owners are like, well, it's just not that easy.
Yeah.
The other thing you got to do is you got to kind of make the determination, how big do you want your business to be? Some people want to be the biggest show in town.
Yeah.
People like me, I don't really care about being the biggest show in town. I just kind of want to make a living, and I want to have my vacations that I have earmarked. And
sure. Yeah, that's important. You know, I think that's almost a whole nother podcast of talking about how to grow your business or to stay small. I think with this channel here, I like to focus on more of a smaller business, trying to squeeze more money out of your clients because let's face it, you're like one or maybe two guys in a truck. You only have a certain amount of time, and so we like to focus on squeezing more money out of the customers while we're there. What do you think about that? Like time and then the money. When you're first getting started, when you're small, do you have any advice for somebody who's first getting started, like how to upsell or what to do? What do you do in your upselling in your own business?
Well, when we first start out, we kind of take anything we can get, right?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I'll use your industry. Someone might say, "Hey, I've got a little vegetable garden. Do you pull weeds? Because I don't want to pull the weeds in my vegetable."
Sure.
And you're like, "Absolutely."
Yeah.
And as we grow, what we're doing is we're thinking about margins. And what I mean by margins is what areas in our industry have the highest profit margin versus the lowest profit margin.
Yeah.
For example, putting bark around flower beds, they look nice and a lot of customers want it, but it's a lot of labor. And when all's said and done, you're really not making necessarily as much as you might on a mowing.
Sure.
So as we grow our business, one is we're kind of not taking on the low margin stuff. And the other thing is we might not even take certain clients on. We might raise our price and say, hey, I can get more money out of people. People are willing to pay more. And people that aren't willing to pay more, maybe they have to use another lawn service.
Yeah.
So we're constantly evaluating. I don't think you need to feel shameful if your objective is to make a profit. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, we're all in business to make a profit. I mean, certainly, we want our kids to send them to school or to college or to go on vacations, and we want to have that life. And why should I have to scrimp and scrape by when really I think we don't think of it. We're the ones providing the service. We're the ones that are reliable. We're the ones that are professional. We're the ones that got the hats and the t-shirts and the truck wrapped, and we're doing the things right. And if they want our service, this might sound harsh, but if little old Miss Jones around the corner wants her lawn mowed, she's going to have to pay for it, and she might have to pay a little bit more for me than maybe the kid next door.
And really, your objective is to lose a handful of customers, right? Because you're trying to have fewer customers and make more money, for example. Or maybe replace these customers that don't want to pay with people that are willing to pay. And you might have somebody to say like you told Mrs. Smith, okay, now it's going to be $100. I know it was 75 last month, and this month it's 100, and she thinks you're like it's outrageous. But then Mrs. Jones says, "Oh yeah, I don't have any problem paying 100." She might be willing to pay 125.
Yeah.
So you're not a charity. Now, I think that charities are awesome, but this isn't a charity.
Not especially when you're first getting started. Yeah, I've talked about that in the past, and it does sound kind of harsh what we're talking about. You got to raise prices, you got to cut customers, you got to squeeze more money out of them, you got to offer these upsells. Maybe don't put the bark down in the flower gardens. While yes, there is the business for that. There's a lot of business out there, but like we were talking about, it doesn't make a lot of money. All of this sounds kind of harsh, but when you're first getting started, you can't afford to offer charity you would just never make it. As you grow 4, 5, 6, 10 years down the road, yes, I have a few charity cases that I take care of, and I like doing it, but it doesn't make me feel bad, or I'm not there, begrudgingly or anything. It's with a cheerful heart that I do it now that I've been doing it, but I wouldn't have been able to do that in the past.
You know what I love about markets? Because you're a market, right? Your business, a market is when you have a willing buyer and a willing seller, and they come together for a trade.
Yeah.
What I love about markets is they always work themselves out. So, for example, back in 2008 and 2009, we had this economy that was tough. You remember those days?
Yeah.
So markets kind of always naturally go to equilibrium. So when the greedy robber baron business owners want to charge Mrs. Smith $100, markets eventually go back to Mrs. Smith and provide more competition. In 2008 and 2009, the economy was bad, and we were knocking on doors. Remember that?
Yeah, that's right about the time when I started.
Yeah, and I always tell people, hey, you know you're a good business when you make it through a really rough economic climate. But
Yeah.
we have to go with markets. So when we have economic fluctuations, in the case of 2008 and 2009, we weren't going in with puffy chests raising our prices. We were going in with, very
Modest
humble,
pricing, yeah.
modest pricing, and we were like telling Mrs. Smith, "Hey, Mrs. Smith, I know that we were charging you 75, but we really want to keep your business. So how about we do 50?"
Yeah, you just lower it a little bit.
Markets really naturally move to equilibrium, and that's really good too.
What do you feel like this market that we're in 2022? It's February. We're just moving forward. We got tax season's right around the corner. What is our market going towards now? Are we going to make? Should I raise prices? Should I lower prices? How are things?
Well,
going
I mean, if I had a crystal ball, I would be retired. But but I will say, let's gather some facts. Fact one is we're in an inflationary period, which means prices are rising. Okay, that can be good for certain people. But I think what really happens, I just had this discussion with my wife because she's like, well, what's really wrong with inflation? And I said, what's really wrong is a small business. There's a point where we keep raising our prices because of higher fuel costs, higher
everything,
input costs, higher everything, higher labor costs. I mean,
that's a big one.
Labor costs have went up exponentially.
We went from paying our guys minimum wage or maybe a couple bucks over minimum wage to what, like 20, 25 bucks an hour, and that's like a $5 or $10 increase in the last 3 years. That's insane.
And there's going to be a point where enough is enough with the consumer, and they're going to say, okay, I think it's time for me to just go buy a mower and a weed eater at Home Depot.
Sure.
And just do it myself.
Yeah. And then, do you think that is this year or next year, or how do you feel? I think where we are reaching kind of that hump, that if I continue to raise prices, and continue to raise prices and continue to raise prices, like you said, the market's going to push back on me, and they may just start mowing their own lawn.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think of the Great Depression and companies that kind of made it through the Great Depression were Coca-Cola. And the reason why Coca-Cola made it is because they had a product that was so inexpensive that even if times were really tough,
you can still afford it.
So you want to kind of come up with a plan for your business. Like, if the economy takes a dive, what are people still going to do? Like, maybe your model is like, and I don't know your business well enough, but maybe mowings, even when times are tough, maybe you do without all the other services that you provide, but your mowings is your bread and butter, the recession-proof side of your business.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I think I'm not going to make any predictions. I mean, I always plan for an economic downturn because I've lived through a few of them in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I grew up when I was in high school in the 80s. There was a bad economic downturn, and we had grown men fighting for teenagers' jobs, like bussing tables at restaurants.
Yeah, sure.
So I've lived through a couple. Sometimes you get younger people and they've never ever seen an economic downturn. They've only seen economic prosperity. So my advice in your business is work out a plan. Like, if tomorrow, if the valve was turned down or turned off, what's your plan? And try to figure out how to make your business recession proof.
That's huge. Yeah. I think in our business, in our segment of, say, lawn care or maybe landscaping industry, I think our target market of people is the segment of people. Maybe they're retired, or maybe they're already have their nest egg and they're not as dependent on the economy as, say, somebody in a different industry.
And I think that's a great way to think. I think if you build your business knowing that, okay, if we're at 100% capacity, who is our target market?
Yeah.
I would think about the retired people or the people that have socked away a lot of money as being because now it's recession proof, right?
Yeah.
If you take the guy that works a middle class job, if his job ever was in jeopardy,
The first thing he would cut would be the lawn care. Sure.
right? So that's kind of how you create this recession proof mentality in your business.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, this is good.
Yeah. Awesome.
Not just for the camera, but just for general.
I mean, it really is, because I just constantly think like that.
Mm.
The other thing I think about is carrying a low debt. I mean, sometimes sometimes people they're so spoiled. I know we've got a friend that started an excavation business, and he was so spoiled with business this year. He's gonna spend over $1 million in equipment, and I just said,
man, I can't even imagine.
you know, what if the economy turned? So his business model is boom or bust. It's like, I'm either going to hit a home run or I'm going to strike out. And I kind of don't want to.
Feels dangerous.
Yeah, so I like to carry as low debt as possible.
Yeah.
Always low debt, because then once again, you're recession proof.
Yeah, especially when you're first getting started. I remember when I went out and I bought my first lawnmower, the big, like a walk behind, it was like $4,000 or $5,000. That was a lot of money back then, and I had to buy it on credit, and it was scary just getting into the business. In my second year, I kind of knew how much, and man, it was such a burden having that debt upon me. I know it was only a couple $100s a month I had to pay, but back then it was nuts. And so I understand what you're saying, is keeping the low debt. I can't even imagine your buddy with $1 million of equipment and stuff praying for a home run. I mean, what happens if tomorrow something happens and, he's screwed?
Yeah.
It's scary.
Here's another just great piece of business idea to think about is a lot of people think they have a great business based on the revenue that they make. And I'll give you an example. If somebody said, hey, Chris, I have this dry cleaner business I want to sell you, and they tell you it's for sale for $300,000, is that a good deal or a bad deal?
You wouldn't know without looking at the books or how long they've been in business, and there's a lot of things you have to look at.
There is. I mean, there's basically, really, there's two big things. How much money are you bringing in, and how much money are you paying out? And the difference between the two of those is profit.
Sure.
So when you have an excavation company that's bringing in $1 million a year, you might think that's really good. But if their expenses are $1.1 million a year,
oh boy, yeah.
So you know what I mean? If you're thinking that either recession-proof type of business or inflation-proof type of business, you constantly want to think about your debt and think about, what are my expenses? Because if you go into a recessionary period, you can't control your revenue, right? Mm-hmm. In fact, more than likely, your revenue side is going to go down, and your expenses some of it might go down because they're variable costs, but they might not.
And if I have a huge payment on $1 million machine,
if you have $1 million worth of machinery and it's just sitting there,
oof.
Yeah.
Imagine the payments on that, especially when you're not making any money.
And everything's relative, right? When we first got into business, a $200 a month payment had a bit of anxiety to it.
Yeah.
It's all relative, but
sure.
My model is always carry low debt.
Carry low debt. Getting anything out of this, make sure to carry low debt. This is good, man. This is great. Let's just take a little break here.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Mike, for joining me today here at Standout Promotions. We've talked about a lot of things today. We talked about how do you promote your business, like the 3 things that are most important when first getting started. We talked about taxes. We went down kind of a rabbit hole talking about debt and the whole economy and stuff. But if you're getting anything out of this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and comment below. Comment below your favorite part of the video, so it kind of lets us know, what we're doing right and how we can keep making videos about this. So again, Mike, thanks for joining me. And Mike, we're here at Standout Promotions. Why don't you give a little plug about Standout Promotions? What are you guys all about?
Hey, we do everything from logo design to screen printing, embroidery, basically any way to promote your business. We're the one-stop shop, and we we love what we do and we want to help small business.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.